Hello, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage in the beautiful, kind of rainy state of Maine, but I believe after these April showers pass, the sun will shine before the day is over. Maybe before this video is over. We'll see. Today we're going to talk about this beautiful piece of aftermarket goodness. It's a Reed, R-E-I-D, SFI rated Turbo 400 case. It's one of only 4 or 5, if that, manufacturers of aftermarket cases that I'm aware of. I'm going to rehash the information that I read on the internet over the last couple of years. Reed had a foundry casting these for them, and they were informed by the foundry that they were no longer going to do that because they had a big government contract for something else. So that left Reed scrambling to find another foundry, which they did. They had to make new molds, I guess. And again, this is just what I read on the internet. But there was a massive shortage of these before COVID hit. So they're back on the market now. They're not inexpensive. I'm going to get several interactions asking the price. This one on Summit Racing was $1,918 plus, well, for me that's almost $100 of tax. And as of last week, they had a few of them in stock. I'm sure they're coming and going daily because hopefully things are starting to come back online, although you have to really shop around these days to find anything. Me personally, I was interested in the ATI Super Case, but they're not available till next August. So that being said, and this is not for me, the customer wanted a Reed case, and that's what we're going to use. So what do you get and how do you go about using one is going to be the topic of this video. For starters, if you have a complete transmission and you're just going to swap into this case, that's doable. However, you need to be aware that this case does not come with any of the park mechanism, which most of it will transfer over from your case, but when it comes to the parking pawl and the pin that goes into the case with a cup plug, you have to make the choice. You can gingerly work it out of your case, and if you're careful, you can even reuse the cup plug. Myself, I've successfully tapped the rear of the case 1/8 inch pipe, like this one comes already. That's 1/4 inch pipe actually, but I actually drill and tap that 1/8 inch because your pin for the parking pawl is going to go right there. But they left you no provisions for that. ATI does a really good job of sourcing and providing all the pieces you need to put park back in this transmission without robbing them from your transmission. So that's a consideration if you want to sell or reuse your case and it doesn't have the parking pawl pin and clip in it. You might be better off just buying it new when you buy the case. I'm already a little bit out of order. I was going to talk about what comes with the Reed case, but I've already opened the can of worms, so let's just continue. I bought a new ATI parking pawl, a new pin and clip, a new rooster, a new shift shaft. That's a Sonex. Everything else I'm mentioning is ATI. The spring for the park pawl. The guide for the parking pawl. The actuator rod. I guess to be perfectly clear, the guide is for the actuator rod and the pawl. It interfaces between them. Missing still, the seal, the bolts for the guide. You get the picture. You have to source a few things on your own. I'm still waiting. I've ordered some detent springs that bolts on with the valve body that rides on top of the rooster. I was doing a transmission the other day and that wasn't any good, and I had used all the ones I had. I like to strip, like those rusty Pontiac transmissions I stripped. It's a good source of stuff like this. I got a pile of rusty stuff I still need to go through, but the guides, the roosters and stuff like that. But in this case, we're going all brand new, and all this stuff in this box adds about $165 onto your purchase price. But hey, it's all brand new and it'll work. It's extremely frustrating when you're assembling a transmission and the end is near and you go to, for instance, you're missing the spring for the parking ball. It's like a $2 item. Well, let's be honest, nothing in a Turbo 400 is $2, but it's a few dollar item. And you don't have one. And you're not gonna make one out of a carburetor spring or anything. It's pretty specific the way it's made. And should that fail, it's gonna rub on, the park is gonna wanna engage all the time. It's gonna be a mess. It's just not worth it. It's a showstopper, much like the detent spring. There's nothing you can substitute for that. So really frustrating when all the little parts, I didn't mention the nail. That nail is very specific. I've seen people use cotter pins and everything else, but if you measure it, go to your local hardware store, you're probably not going to find the nail that holds the shift shaft in. Nor does anybody sell that. You're kind of on your own to come up with something to hold the shift shaft in place. It's on my list of things to do to find that correct nail. Believe it or not, the details matter. So let's talk about what actually comes with the reed case. Instructions. Why do you want a reed case? Well, it's bomb-proof. You don't need an aftermarket shield covering it, covering the top of it. In a lot of classes, the driver's sitting right next to this with no floor over it. Other classes like NHRA Pro Mod, they now make them put a shield over the top of it. Personally, for spraying oil, I would want that, because once you're strapped into the car and something's squirting hot oil at you, you're kind of trapped there till you get it stopped. Whereas a few pieces of carbon fiber or aluminum would prevent you from getting wet and burnt potentially. But anyway, with this, for the next 5 years from this coming August, so you get a bonus 3 months according to the tag. It's tagged August 22, so 5 years from this coming August, this thing is, will pass tech, and at that point you need to take it apart and send it back to be recertified, which is kind of a pain, but that's the way of life with all SFI stuff. This takes a bolt-on, reed-specific bell housing, the same reed-specific bell housing that fools everybody that goes online. They're going to buy an aftermarket bell housing for the Turbo 400 because this reed-specific one is only like $240. It's the cheapest one available. People buy it and want to bolt it on the Turbo 400, and you can't without an adapter ring that goes from the pump to this. Now the BTE housing comes with that adapter ring. If you buy it to put on your regular Turbo 400 and upgrade someday to this reed case, so one like it, you can unbolt the adapter ring and bolt the BTE right on here. I haven't tried it, but that's what the instructions say, and I actually have one here somewhere. We could try it in the interest of science, but we'll see. I didn't get back around to the camera fast enough, but if you look behind me, the orange shield on the lathe, the sun keeps coming out and hitting that, so that's awesome. So what comes with the reed case? It has a provision for a dipstick on the driver or the traditional passenger side, and they give you a plug and a little screw and O-ring to plug whatever side you're not going to use. I'm going to plug the driver's side and use the traditional passenger side. A note about the dipstick: on the reed case, the reed pan rail is a 1/4 inch thicker, 1/4 inch further away from the full mark. They give you a spacer to space down the filter to go in conjunction with your stock spacer, so you're going to have 2 spaces now. And the dipstick angle, they tell you, is slightly different. And in either case, you need to verify where your full line is, and in this case, you need to go up a 1/4 inch from the pan rail to put it where the factory one was. Kind of like a power glide, where you need to go up 3/4 inch from the pan rail, whereas a stock Turbo 400 case, the correct full mark is the pan rail. So, something to be aware of. They give you a full complement of plugs and a vent, because the reed case has, I've mentioned the one for the parking pole. They give you 2, you can't see it in the picture, but take my word for it. In the reverse servo, they give you 2 ports where you can potentially get information if you wanted it from there, I assume. Either way, they're there. There's really no mention of their purpose, but I would have to believe that some people might want that information. Personally, I don't. It comes, well, I don't know if you can see inside the case, and I'll bring you around afterwards, but unlike a stock Turbo 400 case, there is no void of lugs for the intermediate pressure plate in the case. This thing is 360 degrees of teeth, so no need for a case saver. There is no void in the case. It comes with the largest intermediate snap ring you'll ever see. Fighting this thing in and out of the case should be fun. This thing is an 1/8 inch thick. No worries about this popping out. The intermediate pressure plate itself, you have to use it, and it comes 435 thousandths thick, which is the same as a stock Turbo 400 that had 3 clutches on the intermediate. So if I'm going to run my 4-clutch 4L80 setup, I'm going to have to put this in the lathe and cut it down this way. So all normal stuff, no big deal. Again, I kind of jumped around, but they give you the roller thrust bearing and 1 shim, which is 10 thousandths, which is what I typically go with a stock Turbo 400 case. I'll start with the TH400 pump bearing and a 10,000 shim, and usually it's money when you put it together. The difference between the Reed case and the stock Turbo 400 case, I put black side down in a Turbo 400 stock case. That's the way it feels the best. That's the way it always works out. And that's the way I believe other people do it. And I put my shim, you could do it on either side. I used to put it on the output carrier side, but instead I decided putting it against the case and sandwiching it in between. In the Reed case, they've cut a deep pocket, and they want you to put the bearing and silver side down. They call it the large stationary body part. And they want black side up. And they want the shim still underneath that. So that's the way it's going to go. It's going to sit in the case just like that, instead of this way, the way I put it on a stock Turbo 400 case. It'll probably work either way, but I'm going to follow the instructions. Not only am I going to follow the instructions, I actually called them a few minutes ago just to make sure I'm understanding their terminology of the large body part. So it only takes a second. I try to be polite. I don't bug them for very long, but I just want to make sure, after spending a couple grand, I don't make a simple mistake. Usually a good idea. Here's the view looking down into the case. Again, 360 degrees of lugs for the intermediate pressure plate and the recess where the bearing's going to sit. It comes with a pre-installed rear case bushing. It seems to be really clean. Not a lot of imperfections. I'll still clean it one more time before I assemble. All the threads are not only bored, but they're all helicoiled. I assume that's stronger than direct tapping into the aluminum. These are the extra ports I talked about that go into the both chambers of the reverse servo. A slight change from a stock Turbo 400. The cooler ports are regular NPT tapered pipe, and they're also on a slightly different angle, but clearly labeled in and out. Also an extra port down here that needs to be plugged. That goes into the front accumulator. And while sold mostly for drag racing, I believe if you wanted to, you could run a stock governor and make it automatic shifting. I'm sure nobody does, but I think you could. There are 2 versions of the Reed case currently available. This is the drag race unit. They also make an off-road unit, which has provisions to run a 4L80E type center support that I believe would run the spread cooler lines. It has speed sensor ports and a different front band anchor arrangement. The Turbo 400 off-road transmission is a completely different animal. They even make different shifters for it, so you can easily go from forward to reverse. I know, like all the trophy trucks and that, they all run Turbo 400s. Turbo 400 is just a universal, awesome transmission that can be adapted to just about anything. Have you ever seen the demolition derby ones where they enclose the entire case with steel so it doesn't break when you know, doing your thing out there? Demolition derby in some parts of the country, not my part of the country, is a big deal. So I didn't celebrate it, but I want to thank everybody. I passed 4,000 subscribers last week. That's pretty awesome. Slowly growing at a turtle's pace, but hey, we're trending the right direction. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you in a couple days.